$32. That was the exact amount I had in my bank account the night my father threw me out into a rainstorm and locked the door. His exact words were, "You'll be begging on the streets in 6 months." Fast forward 15 years. I don't beg for anyone. I run a 14-restaurant empire with hundreds of employees and millions in revenue. Last week, after 15 years of dead silence, my mother called out of nowhere, not to apologize, but to demand a 30% cut of my business. She thought she was getting a payout. She had no idea what was actually in the envelope I sent her. My name is Emma, and I'm 29 years old. To look at me today, walking through the pristine marble lobby of my regional corporate headquarters, adjusting a tailored blazer, you'd think I was born into privilege. You'd think I was one of those people who had a safety net waiting for them every time they took a step. But if you went back 10 years, to the exact night I turned 19, you would have seen a completely different person. It was a Tuesday night, raining so hard the water was coming down in thick, blinding sheets. My father stood at the top of the porch steps of our family home, his face red with a rage that had been building for months. My packed belongings were crammed into 2 black plastic garbage bags sitting at my feet. "You think you know better than me?" he shouted, his voice echoing over the thunder. "I gave you a path. I gave you a future. And you're throwing it away for a fantasy." My crime was simple. I had refused to enroll in the pre-law program he had chosen for me. I wanted to work in hospitality, to learn the restaurant industry from the ground up. To him, that wasn't a career, it was an insult to the family name. "Mark my words, Emma," my father yelled, his laughter cold and completely devoid of warmth. "Within 6 months, you'll be crawling back here, begging on the street for a hot meal." He grabbed the storm door, slammed it shut so hard the glass rattled, and flipped the deadbolt. The lock clicked into place with a sharp, final sound. I stood there on the soaked pavement, 19 years old, holding 2 trash bags and a wallet containing $32. That was the moment my life as I knew it ended, and the grind began. That night, the back seat of my 11-year-old sedan became my bedroom. I parked in the far corner of a 24-hour grocery store lot, wrapping myself in a thin fleece blanket while the rain pelted the roof. Sleep didn't come easy, but clarity did. I had $32, no safety net, and a point to prove. The next morning, before the sun was fully up, I drove straight to the industrial district and started walking into every kitchen, diner, and greasy spoon open for breakfast. I didn't care about the position, the hours, or the pay. I just needed a foot in the door. By noon, after 7 rejections, the owner of a chaotic, high-volume diner called the Rusty Spoon looked at my desperate, tired eyes and handed me an apron. "Dishwasher quit 2 hours ago," he said, pointing to a mountain of greasy plates. "Minimum wage. Start now." I didn't hesitate. I plunged my hands into the scalding water and spent the next 10 hours scrubbing pots, clearing tables, and hauling 50-pound sacks of potatoes. When my shift ended, my hands were raw and pruned. My back was aching, but I had earned enough cash for a warm meal and gas. Over the next 2 years, I lived off coffee, grit, and 80-hour work weeks. I picked up every extra shift available. When the dish pit was clean, I stood next to the line cooks, watching how they prepped, how they controlled heat, and how they managed ticket times. When the front of house was slammed, I jumped into bus tables, host, and serve. I memorized the diner's inventory costs, studied the manager's scheduling flow, and learned how every single penny moved through that building. I was sleeping on a threadbare mattress in a tiny studio apartment by then, living on beans and rice, but I saved almost everything I made. While my old high school classmates were out partying or relying on their parents' allowances, I was quietly building the foundational blueprint of my future. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was studying the business. By the time I turned 22, I had saved every spare cent and moved up from line cook to head shift manager at a mid-sized bistro downtown. I knew the operational numbers inside and out, but managing someone else's dream wasn't going to get me where I needed to go. I wanted my own place. I found a rundown, failing Italian bistro on the edge of the financial district. The owner was drowning in debt and desperate to sell the lease and equipment. I took every penny of my savings, $15,000, and walked into a local credit union with a 60-page business plan I'd written late at night on my kitchen table. The loan officer looked at my age, then at my detailed cost projections, and took a gamble on me. The day I signed the lease, the real work began. I spent 16 hours a day renovating the dining room myself, scraping off peeling wallpaper and painting the walls a warm, modern navy. I redesigned the menu from scratch, cutting wasteful inventory and focusing on high-margin, elevated comfort food made with fresh, local ingredients. When we opened the doors, I worked every role imaginable: head chef during lunch prep, floor manager during dinner, and accountant long after midnight. Within 6 months, word of mouth spread. The tables were booked weeks in advance, and the restaurant turned its first net profit. While my exhausted body wanted to rest, my mind kept racing. I didn't spend a single dollar of that profit on fancy clothes or a better apartment. I put every cent straight into a high-yield growth fund, already eyeing the location for restaurant number 2. Once the first restaurant was running like a clockwork engine, the momentum became unstoppable. I took the blueprint I had perfected: tight inventory control, exceptional customer service, and elevated menus, and applied it to a second spot across town. It hit profitability in under 4 months. From there, growth didn't just happen, it accelerated. By the time I turned 26, I had opened 5 distinct dining concepts across the city. By 29, that number had expanded to 14 locations statewide, ranging from casual lunch spots to high-end steakhouses. I was no longer just managing kitchens. I was running a corporate enterprise with over 300 employees on the payroll. I became a recognized name in the regional business community, appearing on local magazine covers and serving as a keynote speaker at hospitality summits. My schedule was packed with supplier negotiations, expansion plans, and corporate strategy. Yet, through all those years of rapid growth, media features, and opening nights, my phone remained completely silent from the people who had raised me. 15 years had passed without a single text, call, or letter from my parents. They had completely written me off, assuming I was somewhere out there, paying the price for disobeying them. I was fine with that silence. As far as I was concerned, my past was buried, and my future was entirely my own creation. It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon, almost 10 years to the day I'd been locked out of my childhood home, when my phone vibrated on my mahogany desk. The screen displayed an unknown area code, but the sequence of digits was burned into my memory. I picked up, staying silent. "Emma? Darling, is that really you?" My mother's voice came through the speaker, dripping with a sugary, rehearsed warmth that made my skin crawl. "Oh, sweetheart, I've been trying to track you down for weeks. We saw your picture in the business journal. We are just so proud of you." "Hello, Mom," I said smoothly, leaning back in my leather executive chair. She didn't waste much time with pleasantries. Within 2 minutes, her tone shifted from motherly pride to cold calculation. She explained that my father's investments had turned sour, their home was facing foreclosure, and they were struggling to maintain their lifestyle. "We raised you, Emma," she said, her voice dropping all pretense of affection. "We gave you your drive. So it's only right that family looks out for family. Your father and I discussed it, and we believe a 30% stake in your restaurant group is fair compensation for everything we sacrifice for you." In the background, I heard my father's muffled voice barking, "Tell her we expect the legal papers signed by Friday." I didn't scream, and I didn't lose my temper. Instead, I let out a long, slow breath and let the quiet stretch between us on the line. "Check your mailbox by Friday," I said softly, keeping my tone completely even. "That's my girl," my mother said, letting out a relieved sigh. "We knew you'd make the right choice for the family." She hung up, convinced that 15 years of abandonment could be erased by a single phone call and a quick cash payout. She genuinely thought a certified envelope containing equity transfer forms and corporate shares was about to land on her doorstep. The next morning, I met with my lead corporate attorney. I handed over a detailed paper trail, every bank statement from my 19-year-old self, every loan document I'd single-handedly taken out, and every piece of corporate filing proving I was the sole 100% owner of the enterprise. By Thursday afternoon, a thick, formal legal package was dispatched via express certified mail directly to my parents' house. Inside was a formal cease and desist notice warning them that any further attempts to contact me or claim ownership in my business would result in immediate civil litigation for harassment. Attached to it was an itemized document detailing the exact dollar amount of financial support they had withheld when they illegally locked out a 19-year-old dependent, a sharp, undeniable reminder that they owed me everything, and I owed them nothing. The certified envelope arrived at their doorstep on Friday morning. My attorney called me later that afternoon to confirm delivery and let me know my father had called his office in a rage, yelling about betrayal and demanding to speak with me. My attorney simply reminded him that any further attempts to contact me directly would result in an immediate restraining order. That weekend, I sat on the balcony of my lakefront condo with a hot cup of coffee, watching the morning sun reflect off the water. The air was crisp and completely still. For 15 years, a small part of me had held onto the phantom weight of my father's final words, wondering if I would ever truly prove him wrong. But sitting there, looking out at the skyline where 3 of my flagship restaurants were serving hundreds of guests, I realized I didn't need their validation anymore. I didn't build my empire out of revenge. I built it because I believed in my own strength when the people who were supposed to protect me didn't. I had turned $32 and 2 trash bags of clothes into a life of absolute independence. True success isn't about getting even with the people who abandoned you. It's about building a life so solid, so authentic, and so entirely your own that their opinions can never touch you again. My home is quiet, my business is thriving, and my future belongs to me. And that is more than enough.